Good morning. My name is Mike Friel. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for the Office of Public Affairs at U.S. Customs and Border Protection. I want to thank the members of the media for joining us here today. The intent of today's press conference is to announce U.S. Customs and Border Protection's border security results for fiscal year 2019. Our fiscal year starts October 1st of 2018 and runs through September 30th, 2019. Today you will hear from our Acting Commissioner, Mark Morgan. You will also hear from our Deputy Commissioner, Robert Perez. They will deliver brief remarks, and then they will open it up for a few questions. We ask that if you have a question, that you state your name and your affiliation and ask your question and allow others to ask their questions as well. Thank you again for joining us, and may I introduce you to the Acting Commissioner, Mark Morgan.
Good morning to everyone, and again, thank you for being here to discuss this year's border security, humanitarian, and trade statistics for the Customs and Border Protection. I'd like to acknowledge a couple of folks who are with us here today who are an integral part in everything that we do in this great state of Texas and this great city of El Paso. First is Steve McGraw, who is the Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, and El Paso Judge Ricardo Sabanegro. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. And also, we've got the leadership here of El Paso with us as well, from CBP. And you know, it's appropriate that we have our partners with us here today, because as law enforcement professionals,
than I would have wanted in the sun out here. But what you have is the men and women of the Customs and Border Protection personnel from the El Paso area. Standing behind us, you have individuals representing the 60,000 plus personnel within the Customs and Border Protection that are stationed not just in the United States, but in numerous countries throughout the world. Behind us, you have individuals from our Office of Field Operations, United States Border Patrol, and our Air and Marine Branch, and you'll see a lot of people that are not in uniform, the professional personnel that are an integral part of everything that we do as well. These men and women serve on the front lines of our nation borders, protecting more than 66,000 land border miles, 2,000 coastal miles, from the air, land, and sea, working 24/7, 365, often in austere environments. They're out there every day protecting this great nation. They, as well as their families, sacrifice more than most understand or could comprehend. You know, we just lost a United States Border Patrol agent, Agent Houghton, marking the 127th agent that's died in the line of duty. For you, for me, for us, and this nation, 127 Border Patrol agents have given their life. After this press conference, I'm actually headed to meet another agent, Agent Tenna, who just recently, while he was trying to stop a criminal who was trying to avoid a checkpoint in a stolen vehicle, was hit by another vehicle, and he had to have his leg amputated. He's actually had 2 operations now, and his leg is actually amputated above the knee. This past weekend, I had the privilege to attend the IACP annual conference, where Border Patrol agent Jonathan Morales received the IACP Officer of the Year. Agent Morales was off duty. He was attending religious services at a synagogue, a Jewish synagogue in California, when a coward, a disgusting coward, entered the synagogue and began his killing rampage. Officer Agent Morales, he wasn't armed, and he stood there, but what he did know was the synagogue had a weapon that was inside the synagogue, unfortunately, in case something like this happened. He made his way to that location, and he recovered the firearm. He didn't know it, but it was a revolver. He opened the cylinder, and there was only 4 rounds in the cylinder. But what did he do? He closed that cylinder, he got up, with only 4 rounds and a revolver, he pursued and closed the distance with an active shooter with a long gun. He pursued him. He forced the active shooter outside. As the coward ran from Officer Morales engaged him. He fired multiple times. He missed a couple of times and hit the vehicle. As he closed the distance, he pulled the trigger one more time. Unfortunately, he'd ran out of ammunition, and the coward drove away. For that, he received the IACP Officer of the Year. And make no mistake, these actions that I just described, this is who they are. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is our character, and this is what we do every single day in this country. Make no mistake, this country is safer because of their efforts, sacrifices, and their dedication. They have and continue to secure our nation's borders, enforce our nation's laws, save lives, maintain integrity in our immigration system and our rule of law. And they do so with humanity and compassion. After seeing firsthand the crisis that we faced for far too long, anyone who says this is a manufactured crisis, they're just lying. They're misleading the American people, and it's not honest. And it's not just about the humanitarian crisis. We haven't done a good enough job talking about that there's much more to this crisis. There's also the national security crisis along the southwest border. Illicit narcotics are pouring into this country. Last year, 68,000 people died because of overdose of illicit narcotics. The year before, 70,000 people died in this country. And it's not just about drugs and overdoses. Criminal aliens and gang members make their way to and often past our borders every single day. These bad actors and drugs make their way into every town, city, and state in this nation. If you have an overdose in Ohio or Detroit, and I could keep naming the states and cities, more likely than not, that drug came from the southwest border. We don't talk about that enough. Now let me walk you through some of the facts for fiscal year 2019 regarding how the men and women, how these men and women standing behind me worked every single day to protect this country, all while facing an unprecedented crisis along the southwest border. And keep in mind, they accomplished what I'm about to tell you when Congress, our own Congress, refused to get off the sidelines, refused to do their job to pass any meaningful legislation to protect this country and address the loopholes in our current legal framework. Congress knows exactly what they need to do, and I know that because I personally have told them. Yet they have been unable to put one piece of legislation even on the floor of Congress to end this crisis, and they could. So let me give you a few stats. Nationwide, CBP's apprehensions for FY 2019 totaled 1,148,000, more than 970,000 along the southwest border alone. This is a staggering 88% higher than the fiscal year 2018. These are numbers that no immigration system in the world can handle, not even in this country. And each month during the fiscal year, the numbers increased. You saw them. We all saw them, surpassing record highs for families and unaccompanied children. As we recall, during the month of May, a total of 144,000 individuals crossed the border. In just a 24-hour period, we recorded more than 5,800 people in a single day back in May. And on a single day back in May, we actually had 20,000 individuals in custody. We had a capacity of 4,000. Again, staggering. Family units, 473,000, the highest year on record, and a 342% higher than FY18's previous high. Unaccompanied children, 76,000, 26% higher than FY18's total. And what we don't talk enough about, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but I'm also going to tell you about what we caught. And there's some more numbers that should be staggering and should worry you and concern you. But what we don't talk enough about is what we don't catch. We estimated that over 150,000 individuals got away. I think that personally is conservative. You think about that. 150,000 got away. And at the peak, we had more than 40% of our Border Patrol agents pulled off the line. At any given time, we had 731 CBPO officers that were pulled out of the ports to deal with the humanitarian crisis. This absolutely made our country less safe. And what continued to drive and pull Central American families to our borders was the public knowledge that the United States immigration laws were filled with loopholes. And they were coached and mentored and given what to say by the cartels and the human smuggling organization. You grab a kid and that is your U.S. passport. That will guarantee you entry in the United States. The cartels were taking out ads and they were telling these vulnerable families and this vulnerable population, you grab a kid, you're in. And guess what? They were right. I gave you the numbers of what we had to deal with. All while the cartels and human smuggling organization, they got rich on the back of these people. They treated them like trash. They treated them like a commodity. They abused them. And it happened every single day in FY19. And this is what we've been trying to get Congress to get off the chairs and get involved and pass meaningful legislation to stop this. But as Congress sat idly by, as they continue to do, this administration's strategies have brought about dramatic results. As you know, September marked the lowest numbers in a month since this crisis began. Again, you remember back in May, 144,000. Last September, 52,000. Each of the last 4 months of the fiscal year, we had a dramatic reduction in the number of apprehensions. We have worked tirelessly to have other countries in the region, Mexico, the Northern Triangle countries, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, they have stepped up to really see this as a regional crisis that it is. And we are working with them every single day, targeting gangs, human smuggling organization, trafficking organization, and the movement of illicit drugs. And that's exactly what is happening. Mexico, the Northern Triangle countries, they have stepped up, and it's made a dramatic difference. The President and the men and women of CBP, the men and women, again, right behind me, are restoring integrity to our system and the rule of law. We're closing the loopholes that are driving these individuals to turn their lives over to the cartels, to be abused and treat them nothing more as a commodity. Diminishing the smugglers' ability to make billions of dollars on their backs. We have essentially ended catch and release along the southwest border. The message that's going out now for the first time in a long time is if you grab a kid, it's not an automatic passport in the United States. We are shutting those loopholes down. We are communicating that out. They know that there are consequences to the actions, and we're seeing the numbers go down because of that. Although we've achieved an incredible success, there's more to do. The crisis isn't over. The bottom line for us is Congress still needs to pass meaningful legislation to address our broken legal framework if we're going to have a durable, meaningful, and lasting solution to this crisis. Now, let me talk quickly about something, again, that we don't talk enough about, the national security crisis. You know, our bandwidth has really been taken up a lot on the humanitarian side for obvious reasons. But let me talk to you a little bit about why this is also a national security crisis. While we were dealing with more than 1 million apprehensions, as I said, we also seized 750,000 pounds of drugs. Think about that. 750,000 pounds. All the hard narcotics, methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl. All the hard narcotics, seizures went up in 2019. And think about that. While 50% of the Border Patrol resources and a good source of the officers were pulled off the line, seizures actually went up. That should worry us all. It's not just a humanitarian crisis. It's absolutely a national security crisis. CBP, let me give you a few more stats. CBP personnel seized more than 75 million in illicit currency and 1,700 inbound weapons, up 300% from last year, and over 1,000 outbound weapons, nearly 60% over the previous fiscal year. We apprehended more than 16,000 criminal aliens, thousands with convictions for violent crimes, sexual assaults, drug trafficking, as well as homicide. Think about that, 16,000. This should alarm every citizen in this nation. Behind virtually all of these threats are transnational criminal organizations, or TCOs as we call it. They're highly mobile. They maintain sophisticated cross-border networks and engage in a wide range of organizational criminal activities: firearms trafficking, drug smuggling, human trafficking. If it's not just a human smuggling organization. They'll do anything and smuggle anything to make a buck, and they're doing it every single day at our expense. TCOs, they've taken full advantage of the humanitarian crisis, using families and kids as a diversion to get the bad people and the drugs into our country. And it's happening every single day. And those drugs and those criminals, they're finding their way into every town and city in this country. I can't emphasize enough, it's not just about the southwest border. What happens at the southwest border is entering every town and city and state in this great country. We need to make sure we're talking about that more and everybody understand that. CBP arrest of criminals and gang members nationwide, of the criminal gangs members, 1,200. That's up 20% from the last year. And again, I hope this is sinking in. 750,000 pounds of drugs, 1,200 gang members, 16,000 criminal aliens, and almost 3,000 weapons. And that's only what we don't catch. Much more is getting past us. It's staggering. It's a national security crisis. And again, keep in mind, that's just what we catch. All those resources that we had pulled off, but every single category, our seizures and apprehension of drugs and bad people getting in went up. Think about that. We should be worried. Everybody should be worried. And each day Congress fails to address the humanitarian crisis, it's at the expense of our national security crisis, which is at the expense and safety and security of our neighborhoods throughout this nation. You can't separate the humanitarian crisis and the national security crisis. Our ability to secure our borders, it also impacts our economic security. Ensuring efficient, secure supply chain and safe and efficient lawful trade and travel is imperative for a strong economy. So when I talk about the Customs and Border Protection, it's amazing what we do. It's not just about the humanitarian mission. It's not just about the national security mission. It's also about the economic mission, about the lawful transportation and facilitation of trade and travel. CBP in fiscal year 19 processed more than 414 million travelers. Think about that. 414 million travelers. That's more than 1 million travelers per day. In terms of trade, CBP officers processed 2.5 trillion, that's with the T, 2.5 trillion in imports and screened 28.7 million containers, ensuring that the goods coming into our country are safe and legal and cannot harm our citizens or our economy. CBP also collected approximately 74 billion in duties, taxes, and other fees. That's an increase of nearly 59% in duties over the previous fiscal year. And if this wasn't enough, and it is, CBP personnel, and that's why I started with what I did about Agent Hotman, and why I talked about Agent Tenna, and why I talked about Agent Jonathan Morales, who won the IACP Officer of the Year. Here's another statistic that tells you a story about who is standing behind me right now. In fiscal year FY19, CBP, including a lot of people standing right behind me, rescued 4,900 individuals. 4,900 individuals from risk of drowning in rivers and canals and dying in the desert or an abandoned, locked tractor trailer. They didn't ask these individuals what their nationality was. They didn't ask these individuals, are you entering this country illegally? That never happened, and it never does in these circumstances. What the men and women of CBP, what these very men and women behind us saw was a human being in need of help and distress. And they immediately went into action 4,900 times, risked their own lives to save these individuals. Yet, how many times is that reported in the media? How many times have you reported that? That's why I say here, and I say it with pride, and it's easy for me to say, they are my heroes. Each and every single day. This is who they are, this is their character, and this is what they do, no matter what you'll hear some members of Congress say or the media say about their character, which is simply not true. And finally, I couldn't walk away without talking about the wall. Since we are here in front of a section of a great section of new wall, I think it's important that I tell you a little bit about the updated status and progress. We now have completed 75 miles of new wall. Let me make that clear. 76 miles of new wall along the southwest border. And I'm here to tell you, there's another false narrative out there. I've heard it so many times that, well, this is the president's vanity wall. Well, I'm telling you right now, that's just a lie. That's not true. The wall represents exactly what the men and women of Customs and Border Protection asked for. The experts have asked for this wall. The leadership have asked for this wall to enhance their capacity and ability to effectively carry out their mission, to give them enhanced ability to have operational control over their AOR, to do their job, to safeguard this country. And it's not about keeping good people out. It's about keeping bad people out. It's about keeping drugs out. They've killed 68,000 people in this country last year. And it's about making sure that the cartels don't become a multi-billion-dollar industry every year at the expense of citizens in this country every single day. The men and women in the United States Customs and Border Protection have asked for this wall, and this president has delivered. And I'm confident by the end of 2020, we're going to have 450 miles of new wall built along strategic locations along the southwest border. And it's not just a wall, it's a wall system. It's got integrated lighting and technology and access roads. So that's why I can confidently say the truth is 76 miles of new wall have been built. And the truth is, and the reality is, that some individuals entering this country who cross at the southwest border make their way into the interior United States and commit serious crimes. If we're going to have a rational and intellectually honest debate over this issue, we must acknowledge public safety issues imposed by some, not all, who illegally enter this country. That is the truth, and that is the reality. The wall serves to impede and increase our ability to apprehend criminal illegal aliens before they make it into the interior United States, before they make it to your neighborhoods. That's the truth. The truth, the wall. It increases our ability also, as I said, to stem the flow of illegal narcotics pouring into our country. The truth is that what goes on at the border impacts every community in this country. The wall gives CBP the opportunity to more effectively detect and prevent drugs from entering our country and killing our citizens. If we miss it, it's coming to you. If we miss it, it's coming to your city. If we miss it, it's coming to your neighborhood. That's the truth, and that's the reality. Now, I would like to invite Deputy Commissioner Robert Perez to provide some context and background behind these numbers. The Deputy Commissioner has spent over 26 years of his life dedicated to this mission and protecting this country. He is an invaluable leader. He is my confidant. I learn from him every single day. I deeply appreciate that he's here today. Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. It is truly my honor to be here with you today and with these incredible professionals standing alongside either one of us. So what I'd like to do is very briefly maybe just touch upon a couple of the main points that the Commissioner just said that I think worth re-emphasizing and repeating. It has been an absolutely unprecedented year for U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and all of us who've been in this incredible agency owe a debt of gratitude to the entirety of the 60,000 of the employees who have persevered through challenges unlike anything I've seen in the over 26 years of my career. many of which are standing right behind me. So if I can very briefly just share with you a few thoughts that I think, again, very important, worth re-emphasizing. First, the incredible and unprecedented level of collaboration we've had on the international front. I see our dear colleague and friend, Ricardo Hernandez, who is the Deputy Consul General here in El Paso. Ricardo, thank you for being here with us. It is an unprecedented level of collaboration we've had with our Mexican counterparts, with our counterparts in the Northern Triangle, that in the tail end of this fiscal year, as you heard the Commissioner mentioned, have given us a different bit of this ongoing challenge insofar that the reality of what it is we're facing, both on the humanitarian crisis side and the ongoing national security crisis, is different now. And it is different by and large by this unprecedented level of collaboration. A level of collaboration that we are going to continue to pursue, that we're going to continue to find innovative ways to mature, and that needs to persevere. Because absent permanent, meaningful, durable, and lasting change that Congress only can enact, these collaboration and these partnerships that we have are ever more critical. Make no mistake about it, folks. We need Congress to act. We will also continually to re-emphasize that point because that is a point that is so critical to the entirety of this agency, to the entirety of this department, and frankly to the entirety of the country. The second point that I wanted to emphasize is the community here in El Paso. You all, by and large, have been literally on the front line, alongside us in so many of the challenges that, again, you have seen up close and that the Commissioner just laid out for you by way of all the enforcement actions and the challenges we've had over this fiscal year. Thank you. Thank you for epitomizing a community of supporting the entirety of law enforcement, certainly all of our own here, more than 3,000 who call El Paso home, but the entire law enforcement community here. We all, alongside each and every one of you, face some incredible challenges over the course of this last year, and we can't thank this community enough for what it has done to work alongside us, even when we might not agree on every bit of the solutions that need be put forth. You all stood and continue to stand with us. And so we are very grateful. Know that your CBP family here is here to do everything it possibly can to keep this community safe and secure, as well as the communities around the country. And the last point that I wanted to reemphasize that we can't emphasize enough is the incredible work of these wonderful men and women, many of which are just standing right behind me. These CBP professionals absolutely epitomize our core values of service, vigilance, integrity every day. They do put honor first in everything that they do, every day, for this wonderful community and for the entirety of the nation. The Commissioner and I could not be prouder of these heroes. And as he mentioned, just this past year alone, these incredible professionals effected over 4,900 rescues of people they encountered crossing the border. Every day, these agents and officers and all our support personnel put their well-being and their needs behind those of whom they serve. And we couldn't be prouder and more grateful. And right now, I'd like to actually hand over the microphone, the podium, to one of those individuals who are truly one of the heroes that the Commissioner referred to. Last week, right here in El Paso, Border Patrol agent Luke Gallup was awarded the Law Enforcement Congressional Badge of Bravery. He went above and beyond to save an individual from dangerous waters along the American side of the canal. Congress created this award back in 2008 to honor those in law enforcement who have shown exceptional bravery in the line of duty. And so that you can hear his story straight from him, I'd like to now invite Agent Gallup to share his remarkable story with all of you. And thank you again for being here today, folks. Luke?
Sorry, just give me a minute. Commissioner Morgan, Deputy Commissioner Bettis, Chief Chavez, and other distinguished guests and visitors, I want to thank you for letting me share one account of the countless rescues and intervention performed by CBP personnel, and also highlight CBP's long-standing practice of providing aid to those in distress and the saving of human life. It was a little over 2 years ago. I was a brand new Border Patrol trained EMT, and it had been a particularly deadly month of August. We had multiple fatalities in the river and the canal. That month, I had also assisted giving CPR to a 17-year-old girl who my fellow agents had pulled from the river. On August 27th, 2017, while patrolling less than a half mile west of where we are now, on that day, 2 subjects illegally entered the U.S. less than 100 yards from where we're standing. While attempting to evade arrest and abscond back to Mexico, both subjects jumped into the American Canal and were almost immediately in distress. I responded from my position, and when I arrived on scene, other agents had already attempted to throw rescue ropes and throw bags to subjects, which they were unable to grab. Both subjects unfortunately succumbed to the strong currents of the American Canal. Luckily, I was able to see one subject's arms moving underneath the water, and then that's when I made the decision, and I knew that I had to go in the canal in order to save that person, otherwise he would surely die. So I tied off, went in the canal, was able to reach him, while my partners pulled me and him to safety. Once out of the canal, he wasn't breathing and had a very weak pulse, so my partners began CPR. Thankfully, the subject started breathing again and regained consciousness. And I just want to say that I'm very proud of the fact that as a team we were able to save a life and preserve human life that day. I appreciate the recognition for my actions, but the true credit lies with my partners who also risked their lives that day, and the men and women of CBP who risk their lives every day, so others may live.
So here's what I would ask. Can you report that? Can you, just a couple of people, write about what you just heard? Because that's what represents the men and women behind me. What you just heard was real, from the heart, genuine. He represents and he embodies the law enforcement spirit. He embodies the CBP spirit. He embodies the true character of the men and women standing behind me. And again, I'm proud to be associated with this organization. I'm proud to be standing here, and they are heroes. And you just heard a story of one of the heroes. So before I wrap up, again, I want to make sure that we understand that this is a complex, difficult crisis that we face. CBP does a tremendous job carrying out its vast, complex mission as well. But make no mistake, this is both a humanitarian and national security crisis on our southwest border. We have to get together. We have to do things, meaningful things, on a bipartisan way to pass legislation, to not only deal with the loopholes in our current legal framework to stem the flow of illegal immigration, but also to address the criminal element pouring into our country, the drugs pouring into our country, killing citizens every single day. Since we've been here, citizens of this country have died from drug overdose, and more than likely, those drugs came from the southwest border. So before I turn it over for some questions, I would like to ask if Director McGraw or the judge would like to say any words. Good, Judge? Sure.
Well, thank you. I guess most of you are wondering why a county judge would be here at this event. I'm not here philosophically, and I'm not here as a politician, but anything that takes place in our community, we should be involved. You know, the crazy thing is there might be aisles out there in federal government, but in local government, there shouldn't be any aisles. We should be as concerned as anybody else we have the platform, we have the voice, we have a lot of opportunities. So if we're not here and the elected officials are somewhere else, they're missing out on learning, they're missing out on what needs to happen. I want you to remember very clearly that the people, the men and women behind us here, they're from El Paso, they're part of our community, they went to our high schools, our colleges, their families live here. So whenever you have some kind of understanding or misunderstanding about their role, then we're saying something about our own community. Because each and every one represents our community. They know our community values. They know how we interact. They know what we expect from people that are born and raised here in El Paso. We have a beautiful, amazing community. And I think that more than less than we're doing is we as elected officials need to be and step up and be at the same table. And I hope that that message is loud and clear, that I could either be watching it on TV and or being here getting the kind of knowledge and information. People like Chavez and Mr. Mancha, they are part of our community. They educate us. They get us to understand what's happening here. So anybody that's interested in helping our community, in being part of our community, has to respect what people are doing. And you know, there's an expression, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I'd rather be at the table trying to understand what needs to take place, having my voice there. And it was very generous this morning that I was able to express my comments and my understanding. And so once again, I challenge our leaders. There's no aisles at the local government. There are no aisles. If there are, we created them. You might have them in Congress or at the Senate and all these other places. Here, please, let's get together, let's work together, let's make things happen as a community. We always embrace everybody that comes in. We shouldn't leave anybody out of that formula. Thank you.
Judge, I couldn't have said it better. I agree with everything you just said. And Steve, again, thank you to you personally for your leadership and the men and women and the support that you've given us and this community and the entire state, but specifically El Paso. And also I'd like to thank Greg Allen, the chief of El Paso PD, and Sheriff Wiles as well. Again, I think this, you know, there's several reasons why we picked El Paso to be here to roll out these stats. One, I personally lived here for 2 years. I called El Paso my home. As the judge said, standing behind me, they represent about over 3,000 Customs and Border Protection personnel that live here and make this city their home. And when I lived here and I worked here, I never experienced a partnership both within the community and the law enforcement profession stronger than it's here in El Paso. That's why we wanted to come to your city to roll out our stats. So with that, Bob and I will step up and we'll answer whatever questions you have. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Bob Moore from the Washington Post. You mentioned the downward trend over the last few months in family units coming from Central America and credited the efforts of Mexican and Central American partners for that. One area where we're seeing an increase is in Mexican family units coming across. I think the numbers of inadmissible Mexican families have doubled in the last couple of months. I was just wondering if you could talk about how you plan to address that and what you may be asking Mexico to do as part of that?
Yeah, so a good question. So what we have here, and this should illustrate to everybody, I always say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I'm serious, that the Mexican cartels and the human smuggling organizations could really teach a business class at Harvard, right? Because every single time we attack the current tactics and techniques and procedures we call TTPs, they change and develop new ones. So we've stemmed the flow to a great extent from the Northern Triangle countries. So what do? They go to Mexico and they start taking out social media ads and going to Mexican nationals and telling them, if you grab a kid, that's your passport in the United States. And so again, because we have so many loopholes in our current legal framework, it's a loophole. So we've gone back, we're working with the White House, and we're trying to use and develop new initiatives within the current legal framework that we can apply to the Mexican families as well. Making sure that we're supporting in a humane and compassionate way everyone, but making sure that those who have legal claims are processed effectively, and those that aren't, they're also returned. And again, I know I'm beating this horse, but I'm going to keep doing it. If Congress would get off the sidelines and pass meaningful legislation specifically to address the Florida Settlement Agreement, which says we can only keep families for 20 days, if they would pass that and change that, then regardless of the demographic, we would be able to keep them during the duration of their immigration proceedings, and you would see the stem of this, of illegal claims, drop considerably. Yes, sir.
Commissioner, thank you. Robert Olguin with KFOX 14. We've seen now and reported on 4 straight months of a drop in apprehensions. And yet, the word crisis, so you're saying the crisis isn't over. Help us square that circle in terms of, seeing the drops that we're at now and it still being a crisis in your eyes.
Yeah, so I think it's very important to frame this out. And if I didn't do it effectively, I apologize. I'll try to do better here. So in May, 144,000. So now each month has gone drastically down. And again, that's because of this president and this administration's network of initiatives, regs, and policies, and these men and women stand behind me executing those. You've seen the last 4 months. So last month it was down to 52,000. But that's still a significant increase from this time last year. The daily apps in May were almost 6,000 one day. But today it's gone drastically down, but it's still 1,400 apprehensions per day. That's still at crisis levels. And so although we've made dramatic strides, significant progress, that's what I mean, because we're still getting way too many apprehensions per day. It's still a crisis. And then, gentlemen, a point, again, the cartels are changing those TTPs. We're seeing an uptick in Brazilians. We're seeing an uptick in Mexican nationals. So each time that we think we've addressed one issue, the cartels and the smuggling organizations come up with a whole new set of issues for us that we have to deal with. So we're not out of the woods. And then the other part that I would say to this is the government of Mexico has done a great job. They're down there specifically, again, about 25,000 troops. They're specifically targeting, with our assistance, with information and sharing intelligence, they're specifically targeting the smuggling routes, going after the buses and trains, and they're doing a tremendous job. They're supporting MPP, the Migrant Protection Protocol. But if that changes, we're going to be looking at another increase. And so we're not out of the woods yet.
If I may, Commissioner.
Of course.
Robert, I'm just going to make 2 other points that I think are really important as to why it's still a crisis on both fronts. So as the Commissioner mentioned, so I'm just going to use last month as an example. So last month, we had 52,000 apprehensions and encounters with inadmissibles along the southwest border. 49% of that 52,000 were families and children. This crisis, these inadmissibles and these migrants are being abused and used by criminal organizations. They are profiting on the backs of these vulnerable populations, and that is why this is still a crisis. The previous secretary of the last administration said that a bad day was 1,000 apprehensions along that southern border, and as the Commissioner just mentioned, we're still averaging about 1,400 over the course of the last month. And the other point that I think is so critical, because the Commissioner spoke about it at length this morning, folks, is the national security and border security aspect of this crisis. Again, you heard the numbers. All the hard narcotic seizure numbers for this agency went up when compared to last year, despite the fact that at times half our Border Patrol agents were on a humanitarian mission. That tells me 2 things. First, these men and women are second to none in their wherewithal and what it is they can do to execute the mission on the front line. But secondly, is that the criminal smuggling organizations, the transnational criminal organizations fueling this poison into our communities nationwide are ever present and continually challenging us and changing the ways they do things in order to get their scourge into our country. That's why it's still a crisis.
So that's why Bob's here. One a foot stomp, that's a big miss, and that was one of my themes here. Another reason why it's still a crisis, because we apprehended 16,000 criminal aliens, 1,200 gang members, and 750,000 pounds of drugs that are pouring in this country and killed 68,000 people last year. So as long as that's still happening, it's still a crisis. Yes, sir.
Hi, thanks for the question. Thanks for being here. Can you talk about the decision to expand MPP and Eagles Pass and Piedras Negras, given all of the challenges posed by cartels that you just outlined? And my name is Cedar Atanasio. I'm with the Associated Press.
Yeah, so right now, MPP, I've referred to this many times as a game changer. Again, I'm going to keep foot stomping the fact that why Congress sits idly by on the bench and doesn't do anything to change this. And let me make clear, when I say Congress, what they're failing to do, it's not just for the American people, but as Bob said, look, we say this, and I tell you, in the media, it just doesn't seem to be reported what we say when we say this. Is we want to do this not just for this country, for the United States, but also the families that are coming and the kids. They're being abused. These cartels and human smuggling organizations, they're not even viewing these individuals as humans. They're viewing it as a commodity. It's disgusting. And that should bother us all. This population that's looking for a better life is being abused every single day by these cartels and getting rich on their backs. We should all want to stop that. And so what the MPP does is what we're trying, again, with the government of Mexico assisting us, is to have them go back to Mexico and wait while they're going through the proceedings. We hope, and we are already seeing this, is that we're going to send the message that you cannot just grab a kid and come with a meritless claim. You're no longer going to be allowed in the United States. We're seeing now the numbers go down because of that. So I'm going to stand here proud about MPP because I know it's working in this sense. I know that fewer people now are mortgaging their homes and paying the cartels thousands of dollars to take a dangerous trek and be abused and often die, right, because of the smugglers. And if MPP is helping do that, then to me, it's absolutely effective. Now, we're continuing to work with the government of Mexico. We're working with them every single day. The leadership that you see standing right here, they're working with the Mexican counterparts every single day. And every single location that MPPs are being applied to include Eagle Pass, the same thing has happened. So the local leadership is working with them every single day to make sure that they have the capacity, to make sure that when they go back and forth, it's being done in a safe and humane way. We're working, our international office at headquarters is working with their counterparts in Mexico. I just returned from Mexico myself having these same discussions. So we're doing everything that we can. The government of Mexico is very similar to us. They're reaching out to faith-based organizations. The judge and I, we were just talking about that this morning. We're trying to assist them to get better at working with their faith-based organization as well to make sure that they're doing everything that they can. The UN, through the IOM, is working in Mexico as well to make sure that they're doing everything that they can to facilitate this in the most humane and compassionate way. Bob, anything? No. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, sir. I'm Julio Chavez from Reuters, and I have a quick question about the prompt asylum claim. I have a quick question about the prompt asylum claim review program you guys are trying out here in El Paso. It's kind of in two parts, but the first part is basically how many people have you guys put through it so far, and what have the results been?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So as we've mentioned, we're utilizing every tool available to us that we can within the current framework. And because of the wherewithal of the folks here in El Paso, we've begun to utilize some of the tools, some of the rules that we've been able to put forth over the last few months. But in addition, the incredible collaboration we've had, particularly with, in addition to Mexico, the Northern Triangle countries, to essentially effectuate and bring integrity back to the process. And so we're modestly getting out the gate as far as the numbers and the types of folks that we're putting through these expedited processes. But in the end, it's really simple. It's about effectuating an efficient and bringing integrity to an immigration outcome. for those who would seek a claim to stay in the country. And so we are going to continue to lean on our workforce here to try to pilot some of the newer initiatives and agreements that we've made with some of the Northern Triangle countries to, again, within a very challenging framework. I mean, this is the part that we can't say often enough, folks. We need Congress to act because we are literally trying to get, or bring integrity, rather, back into a system that has wrought with loopholes. And so these fine men and women behind me are doing a terrific job. And again, we can't say enough about the collaboration we've had with our partners down in the Northern Triangle. You had another question?
Yes. So the second part of my question is basically, if individuals are only supposed to be in Border Patrol custody for 72 hours generally, however, Border Patrol agents have said that they could have people in Pacer for up to 20 days. How does that work out? Well, what is it that allows that if people are only supposed to be in custody for 72 hours?
Okay, so our objective is to keep folks, because our facilities, the hard-sided ones, were never designed for other than long-term stays. Our objective is to the best extent possible, keep people from within less than 72 hours or 3 days. Look, we all lived the reality of what this year was. I mean, this community in of itself, saw what that reality was when we were dealing with the height of the crisis. Nonetheless, with the additional infrastructure that we've put forth, but most importantly, to your question, the objective is not to keep people in custody any longer than they have to. In fact, it's much less than what you just cited, okay? The objective is within that same handful of days, working alongside the other elements of the Department of Homeland Security who are partnering with us on these programs to get people through an immigration process as quickly as we possibly can so that a judge ultimately makes a decision, okay? Which, frankly, a system that has integrity should be able to deliver that. That is what we're seeking to effectuate with the pilots that we are undertaking here in El Paso. And so it doesn't change what our expectation is on our own, which is we're going to minimize that time frame to the greatest extent possible, well below what it is that you just cited.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. If the cartels are the problem, both in sending migrants north as well as drugs, what is being done against the drug cartels?
So there is an incredible amount of effort from the United States government on multiple fronts. You have a massive intelligence push within the intelligence community that's trying to understand and get better domain awareness exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it, where they're doing it. You have multiple investigative agencies across the board. It's not just federal investigative agencies, but you have our state and local partners that are cooperating and working in task force environments across every facet you can imagine, both on the border in the interior United States, and we're also in other countries working side by side those countries as well. With the government of Mexico, every single day, CBP, we have our largest contingent of personnel in Mexico of any other country. We're working with them on a daily basis to share information, to share intelligence that results in kinetic operations, in the government of Mexico. Our goal, and so is the government of Mexico's goal, is to stop the cartels before the drugs even get to the border. So having said that, we're working on a daily basis with Jim Carroll, the drug czar in the White House, that reports directly to the president. But having said that, there's still more to do. We still need to get better. I mean, obviously, if we're having 68,000 deaths at the hands of illicit narcotics, that means we need to get better. We're doing a lot. Still more needs to be done. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Debbie Nathan from The Intercept. Commissioner or Assistant Commissioner, could you tell how many people are in the pilot program? Could you complete the answer, please?
The pilot program, Pacer.
Yeah.
You know the numbers?
Yeah. So we've to date, because we've only begun several weeks, there's been several dozen, but we expect that number to expand. Don't want to get too far into the specifics because that's a dynamic number that changes every day depending on the encounters and the apprehensions made by the frontline officers and agents. But the intent is to, once we solidify and create confidence in how it is we're rolling out these efforts here in El Paso, that we're going to look to effectuate them across other parts of the border where we're continually getting challenged. Look, folks, the point here is, the really important point that I need to share with you and emphasize is that this gets right back to, again, us having to find ways within a current legal framework and within the collaboration that we have with our international partners to bring integrity back to a system despite legal framework loopholes that persist. And so the message is, time and again, that we're going to do all we possibly can. We're going to continue to be innovative. We're going to continue to lean forward. We're going to continue to do all we can to keep this community safe, to keep every community in this country safe, but we need Congress to do their part. They absolutely need to do their part. It's been too long, and it's been just way too much suffering, not just here, but all over the hemisphere. Okay, the drug deaths that the commissioner mentioned, I mean, that is absolutely tragic, what is happening in every community around this country. And so we really, really need Congress to act.
Okay, one final question.
Hi, thank you for taking questions. Fernanda Chavarri with Mother Jones. You said that you wanted to bring integrity back to a system that has loopholes. I'm curious as to back to when exactly would you like to bring that system? When were those loopholes not there? And what specific legislation you have asked from Congress to pass to take care of some of the issues you've mentioned?
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, I was just going to say, I agree. It never has had really the integrity that it should have. I mean, immigration has been a divisive issue, a critically important issue for decades. I mean, administration after administration after administration has tried and failed. And the specific things, there's really 3 specific things out of 4th with respect to ICE. So again, they need to fix the Flores settlement agreement that right now mandates that we cannot hold kids or families more than 20 days. We want to be able to hold families and kids for as long as it takes to get through the immigration proceedings, which history shows during the detained docket that we're asking for is about 50 to 60 days. That's what we're asking for, to be able to hold them. When you do that, you're going to see the numbers go drastically down because they know now if they grab a kid, it's not going to be automatic release into the United States. It's going to work. The other thing that we need to fix is TVPRA. That's the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. What that means is if you're from Mexico or Canada, this is very important. If you're from Mexico or Canada and you're an unaccompanied minor and you enter the country in the United States, we send you back to your families. If you're from a non-contiguous country, if you're from the Northern Triangle country and you're a kid, unaccompanied, and you come to the United States, we keep you. We keep you. That doesn't make any sense. I've talked to all 3 ministers of security from the Northern Triangle countries, and all of them have said, America, can you please fix the loopholes in your legal framework? We want our children back. Would you stop keeping our kids? It's the future of our country. Congress could do this. They could do this in 15 minutes on one piece of paper. The third thing that they need to do is address the credible fear screening process. Right now, there really is no standard at all. 90% of credible fear is positive, yet 85% on the back end are found not to be credible or they're found in absentia because they don't show up. The fourth thing is that Congress needs to do is they need to support ICE. They need to support ICE specifically with additional funding for detention space and personnel to continue to do interior enforcement to go after criminal aliens that are absolutely committing crimes in every neighborhood in this city. So thank you very much. I know it's a little bit of a warm day. You've been out here for a long time, so I really appreciate it. And please.
I'm going to say something.
Okay, great.
First, I want to thank you and the brave men and women of the CBP. Every day they protect Texas, and we're thankful for them. I also want to harken back a little bit in terms of the national security aspect of it. The collaboration of the cartels with gangs has a major impact, not just in terms of specific communities, but all communities in Texas. We're seeing it in terms of the drugs. When they converge with gangs, there's problems. And we're seeing a unique collaboration among gangs themselves with the cartels. All these things impact our inner cities throughout Texas. And although the border clearly is the sovereign responsibility of the federal government to secure it, you know, Texas legislators and Governor Greg Abbott have dedicated substantial funds to do what we can to provide direct support to CBP, the men and women on the ground. And fortunately, I work in Texas and not in Congress. I deal with the Texas State Legislature. And we do have bipartisan support to protect people, all people, from harm. And that's across the board. So on behalf of the state of Texas, welcome back, Mark and Commissioner. You guys do a great job. We're very proud. And by the way, outstanding contribution, Officer of the Year by CBP. What a hero. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you very much.
For members of the media, if you would like the statistics that were given today, you can go to cbp.gov, and there you will find our statistics, which are posted here, if not already, momentarily. Thank you.